Home Media.
My name's David Atkinson. I've been with the Ballymoney Writers Group for nearly 20 years now. So I joined it when I was only 4. Thanks, Helen. I think it's good to be going first because then you can get that out of the way and enjoy the rest of the night. So I'm going to read 3 poems and then I'll hand over to someone else. We've been tutorless for a wee while now, so Bernie was with us a while and Teresa was with us a while before that. But we've been managing quite well on our own. We've been taking turns to take the group each week, and I think it's been interesting. It's been a new challenge for all of us, but it's something that we've all enjoyed. I think it's helped us to grow a little bit as writers through the process. So I'm just going to read a couple of poems for you, if that's okay. First one's from my new book, Black Eyed Peas. It's called Saturday Night at the Movies. There was the Savoy and the Lyceum, the Majestic and the Colosseum, the Regal and the Roxy, the Tonic and the Troxy, the Princess and the Palindrome, the Alhambra and the Hippodrome, great picture palaces, Art Deco and glass, velvet and brass, where the poor of Belfast could feel like stars for a night. And the Strand, sailing up the Hollywood Road like a great ocean liner, where my grandmother took a flask of tea and sandwiches to Gone with the Wind, and my father watched Flash Gordon and Roy Rogers and rode an imaginary trigger the 2 miles home. Now the Lido is a chapel, the Metro sells fried chicken, the Apollo a Chinese supermarket, and the Alpha a loyalist drinking den. But the Strand, where my father saw Flash kiss Dale and my grandmother saw Rhett kiss Scarlett, and where I kissed a girl badly in the back row 5 minutes before the film ended, the Strand still stands. This one's called Leave Us Dancing. They took the train home from the oncology appointment because it was free and they didn't want to bother anyone. Sat side by side, pretending to be strangers. They looked out opposite windows, bookends without books, silence underscoring the space between. Past the floral hall where it all began, with a sideways look, a shy smile, a wink and a hand he took onto the maple sprung floor, dancing, all hips and feet, glitter ball whirling, skirt swirling, and the big band beat. They jived and twisted, hopped and hucklebucked, and he asked her outside to see the electric ducks. He carried her shoes, and she walked in bare feet, arm in arm together, downhill to Barron Street. Now they dance a slow dance without getting too close, shuffle from room to room, not saying what everyone knows, going out of their way not to step on one another's toes. And the last one's called Blink of an Eye. Finding it hard to focus, she blinked and continued to glaze the lenses from his previous prescription. Astigmatism with a slight strabismus, fitting them with more care than usual. She made adjustments to the frame, length to tangent, blend distance vertex and pantoscopic angle, with reference to notes of facial measurements taken the last time she held his head in her hands. She wanted a pair the same. The other pair were broken in the accident, you know. You see, she wanted him to look like he always did, to look like her little boy. So that's me done. So I'm going to introduce Joe Milligan, who's one of our newer members.
Yeah, I just came along here in September and I'm just going to be as quick as I can here because as nervous as I'd be. This is the first piece I wrote in September, and I'll finish with the latter part. This is a piece of prose, and it's called Make Your Move Now, Milliken. I suppose my first attempt at creative writing was in forging my parents' signature in torn out jotter pages, asking the PE teacher to excuse Joseph from games today. At Korean boys' school in the mid-60s, I wasn't all that interested in athletics as such, preferring instead to spend my time and the odd shilling dinner money on 2 ounces of chew nuts and 2 part drive from the wee shop at the bottom of the school hill. Often as I climbed those steps towards the school, taking furtive drags on the part drive, I would glance through hawthorn hedges at the school playing fields, where my punishment for not being sporty was to be assigned to the shovelling and digging of the sand pits. Then one blistering early summer's day, when the air was abuzz with the build-up to the inter-schools athletics tournament in Macrofault, Irwin pulled me aside and said, "Milligan, our experienced schoolminer is not well, and I thought as you are tall and lanky that you could run a mile for me." At that moment, literally I wanted to. "But sir, I haven't trained or anything." "Don't worry about that. Your race is not until Wednesday, so just go down in the bus tomorrow with the rest and just get a feel of the atmosphere." So I did. On the back of the seat, adrift from the others, who had nothing in common with if they were all sporty type. Still, I enjoyed the day and the warm sunshine, and as I watched one sprinting in their heats, I started to wonder, could I actually win? But then terror struck me. I, for the first time, realised I had no running gear. Like these professionals, I would have to gather something up this afternoon. I slept well that night as I was tired after the usual late night street football. This was the sport I really enjoyed, kicking the ball in scuffed school shoes on concrete roads. Car-free and carefree. I woke next morning to the rare cornflakes ad day, jumping out of bed with the sun shining, the Beatles singing, paperback writer on the old radio. There was no breakfast TV then. But no one shared my sense of excitement at the breakfast table. But no matter, I was going to make a dream come true and compete for my school. Lining up for the big race with curly-haired and barrow-chested opposition in tight-fitting shorts, verdant green vest and strange to me running shoes, I stood slightly back in Frankie Moffat's knee-length football shorts and Mervyn Gahoon's 2 small gutties. But the school vest compensated. It fitted well, and it was fitting that the pupil whose place I was running in gave it to me. So then, it was on the starter's orders, and we were off, or rather they were. Something was not right. Am I in the right race? Such pace? Why, surely we have 4 circuits to do. I was amazed that as fast as I was running, I could see they were just getting farther and farther away from me. Now, it was not a race to win, but a solitary challenge to keep up. I remembered the black and white film of the day, the loneliness of a long distance runner, and I was out on my own, but at the wrong end. The midday sun showed no mercy as I struggled to focus as the group in front of me became smaller. Soon the heat and the despair of the moment encouraged me to look downwards. It was easier that way. Back into my own wee world of distancing myself from the reality, and there was plenty of distance. Suddenly I was aware of running feet alongside me. At first, fear. Was I being lapped? No, but I did note I was coming to the halfway point of the last lap, and then I realised the run feet belonged to Mr. Irwin, the PE teacher, who had such faith in me. His purpose was so he could utter those immortal words which were to stay with me for the rest of my life. He bellowed into my ear, "Make your move now, Milligan." He, for all his wisdom and faith in me, thought I had a game plan. He thought I would now kick my heels like Wilson from the comic books and slay the opposition with a blistering finish. I kicked my heels all right, but against each other, as the pressure was too much, as I hit the ground in shame and despair. And now, blisters as my reward, I was well and truly finished. On the bus home, nothing much had changed. I still sat at the back, a solitary figure, looking out the windows and thinking what might have been. Irwin sat at the front with the medal winners, keeping his distance. Upon reflection, although I didn't win the race, at least I have a memory to share, and I have made many moves since. not least running the last leg of the Belfast Marathon on May Day this year. Timing is not always what it seems. I'm not taking too much time, but this is that's a poem that was encouraged by Elaine at a workshop. It's called Cycle of Fear. Composed, pedaling on Wooler Drive, out of the dark clouds of the gull-crying sky, it dropped stone-like and slippery as a ban eel, entangling me, coiling round my neck, hairs raised, squeezing feeling from limbs, grasping tongue to leave a dry metallic taste. I recoiled into submission, sucked, numbed into the wilderness. 40 years wandering, freewheeling now. This is Leo.
My name's Leo Conway. I started writing when I was 70, so I'll give you the first bit of writing on that day. And then I'll give you a poem or two. June the 21st is the day the sun reaches its highest point, and from then on it starts to decline. Man has always held this day as a special day. So I'm going to skip a bit of here, and I'm going to go to what happened after that. Sunday the 21st of June, a day I will never forget. I came home from Mass at 9. I had thought a lot about writing in the last few weeks. I took off my good clothes and changed into my casual. My wife started to make the fry. It's her Sunday routine. I got out a new A4 writing pad with 300 pages. Then I started to search for a pen. But something in the mind said, not any old pen, one you will be content with. What are you looking for? She asked. A pen. Sure, the house is full of them. And what are you doing with that new pad? I'm going to start writing. Take an old one. You only scribble, and don't destroy that good one. But look, this will not hold what's in my mind, and it has to come out. I turned and walked out into the summer house in the back garden, sat down in the old couch, and wrote the date, 21st to the 6th, 2009, then my name. Then reality hit home. How the hell are you going to write? You can't even write or spell. I sat there and thought for a few minutes and wondered what I was going to write about. Then it burst into my head like a volcano starting to erupt. At first, at first a few words like, today the sun crosses the line, 7 days after my 70th birthday. I take pen in hand to write the things in my mind. Where does one start when one is a bad speller and a bad writer? Just start. As to the tears, from years of built up frustration, of being afraid of what people might say and think about me and what I wrote. My father's saying burst out. A man who could not read nor write, but was a very deep thinker. A few words from him changed your ways of doing things or thinking. The one that is always near my lips. Would you think for yourself and not have other ones doing it for you? This built onto a page. It burnt an imprint on the mind and the soul like lava erupting from the volcano. I knew from that minute I was going to write, and if help was needed, I would get it in my voice. So I didn't know very much where I was going, and for a while it took me a little while to find my feet, or find myself rather. To those that's maybe only starting to write, I say this, because this here is a poem I dedicated to a day of prayer for the renewal and the revival of the faith in in this land, in St Anne's Cathedral in Donegal, Belfast, on Saturday, June the 22nd, 2013, by the International Divine Healing Missionaries. I was asked to take my parish priest up. There were 3 of us in the car, and the priest said to me, I said to the priest, but I don't know why I'm going here. I'm not gospel greedy, but I'll probably find something to write about. And he laughed at me. So coming back down, he said, well, Leah, do you find anything to read about? And this is it. I said, cobwebs. And there's a man who writes in the paper, he laughed, covered the face with lying about it. So this is the poem. Sun splashed through stained glass, spilling its heat into the room, shining on cobwebs stretching there, sleek fine lines glistened in the light, in a pyramid like the Eiffel Tower. Some reached down from above, the silken threads reached far and wide. Then I saw a message there. Your cobweb strains across the world, to prison cells and dungeons deep, to palaces and stately homes, from the poor on city streets, across the bountiful fertile plains, to desert where the camels tread, on arid lands and water scarce, over frozen wastes and mountain tops, and raging seas and river fast they travel on, cover tree, bush, shrub, grass, they stretch, they stick across the floor of this great church. And learned men say many things, and planners try to build the world, but like the spider in the web, he rolls it up and brings you home. God's cobwebs is everywhere. I'll read you one more, and this come out of high temperatures and maybe delirious. And there was a headstone. So this came out as I call inspiration. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. The old man sat on the grassy slope. The smoke from his pipe, like incense, floated away in the air. But he never spoke. His keen eyes watched every stroke. A master stone carver at his work, on an old headstone standing there. And across the base he carved a rope. It came out of the graves, then split in two, and twisted and turned for most of the day. On a granite base, as a chisel chipped away, the master's hand held it there. His eyes guided every stroke. On the end, on each end, an open hand. Then the master got up off his knees and painted it in gold. He read the names, the dates that stretched back hundreds of years. And he packed his gear and he turned to go, seeing the old man sitting there. Sir, can you tell me what that is about? With a smiling face and a twinkling eye. Ah, son, you're good at what you do. The threads, that's the threads of love our mothers give, and they're all woven into a golden rope. The hands you carved belong to God. Open wide for all to see. It's the best way to travel through life. Please wait till I put away my gear. Yes, sure, I'm going nowhere. He returned to a smile on a face, to open hands, a pipe lying on the grass, the smoke drifting away. They asked, did you know his name? No, just a man that told me of a golden rope and open hands.
Okay, and our last reader tonight's Colette.
I first came to the Ballymoney Writers Group 15 years ago, and I've been away for a while. I've just started writing again recently. I didn't come to read tonight, but I'd scribbled down from memory the first poem that I wrote at the Writers Group, so here we go. It's called The Jabbock Sink. The Jabbock Sink of days gone by brings a picture to my mind's eye of a dark-haired woman, small and round, wearing a smile and then a frown. as she reaches into that big white box and she rubs and scrubs at someone's socks. Her washboard hands are worn red, knuckles blistered, and never a word said. You're a great wee girl, don't need no scolding. You be a teacher now when you're older. The big black pot on the old black stove, the smell of washed tea and fresh baked loaves. Well, I'm older now, though not a teacher, and often I wish I could reach her. The cycle's been broken at last, I think, for I'm not tied to my job work sink. No longer it betrays hardship and strife. It's become the symbol of an affluent life, of a woman who has found her voice, of a woman who has a choice.
Very much to Ballymoney Writers Group. I know you're not all actually from the town of Ballymoney, but it's from that area, but that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. So if you want to take your water with you, you can. So I thought, then if, I know it's not all just Flowerfield, but it's that area, Port Stewart, Port Rush, if you would like to come next, and if you want any water to bring up with you, there's some, get some for yourself and bring it up with you. Thank you very much. Ballymoney, give Ballymoney a big round. Oh, sorry, is there another Ballymoney man? Were you wanting to read? Come on. We'll do it. Should we do that? We'll do that now then before Darfleet. Okay, just introduce yourself, I'm afraid. Are you okay about being recorded?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If I can see it.
Hold on, has he thought, or...
It's just a brief wee bit. I'll just read one wee bit and now there.
Brilliant.
Sorry.
Do you want some water?
No, you're right. Okay. All right. Let me see. See where we're at now. Just a wee humorous piece and then a wee poem that suits the time of the year, the Northwest 200. So, let's put here. It's a wee bit of what I call a stand up or sit down, doesn't matter. It's my kind of alternative morality series, right? And this is a wee piece called The Early Bird. The early bird catches the worm. Wrong. Why? I'll tell you why. Yep, the person got up early from their nice warm bed, and yes, they caught the worm, but that didn't satisfy them, oh no. Instead, they arose grumpy. Why? Because they didn't get a proper night's sleep. They tossed and turned all night because they knew that they had to rise early in the morning to catch the worm. I'll say again, the person got up early and they did catch the worm. Yes, now you're thinking. But it was worth it because they will be happy now. Goal achieved. But no. Why? Why? I'll tell you why. In their desperation to get up early to catch the worm, and in so doing, they gobbled the worm too quickly, which they didn't digest properly, therefore giving them indigestion and making them grumpy all day. So here's what I am saying. Silly, desperate, anxious, greedy, owl or young people. Better to catch an extra 2 or 3 hours sleep in bed, sleep well, relaxed and rise calm and chilled, and guess what? Along will come another worm. Say good morning, Mr. or Mrs. Worm. It's a fine day. Then go and have yourself some toast and eggs and chill, man. Chill. And finally, that's right. That's called The Road. Wake up, lie there, thinking about the road. Excitement building. Shower, teeth clean, smile into the mirror. Excitement building. Breakfast in underwear, stomach tingling a little. Excitement building. Dress, one piece, fits like a new skin. Excitement building. Helmet on, gloves on, smile in the mirror again. Excitement building. Open garage, look, sigh. hello darling, you miss me? Excitement building. Leg over, hit engine, listen to the sweet growl, excitement building. In gear, on way, gently now, heartbeat beating, excitement building. We've reached the road, crazy like a spoilt child, excitement building. Throttle cranked, bends glorious, heart racing, voice screaming, excitedly crazy. Made it again, smiling ear to ear, trembling slightly, exciting, yes, let's do it again.
Obscured by outside. The grey sickle-sip carpet still sucks at my shoes. At the far end, the killing room has changed shape and stayed there. But the tortured cigarette burns along its floor have left a pattern on the backs of my eyelids. At night, I sometimes wake to find the bloodening flood of torchlight on my sweat-covered bed. The very voice of Plod hisses, sleep, and the little world clicks off. Everything here is nailed down. In the pan-headed canteen, knives are the last to be laid. All conversation, like clothing, like thought, like action, like reason, is static grey, except for during the red shift, when everything comes inside out and pain creeps the walls, or a scream rises and falls like a resting breath. Here, the walls are bugged and the water's drugged and the captor's eyes hypnotised. At first, I spent the days inside short, starched sheets. Closed eyes can keep you safe, it seems. Waiting for the sinking sound of footsteps. And at night here, the others clutch a playing card to their chests. Dreams of sainthood and fire escapes. In the darkness, the sometimes sound of a tin box opening from another bed makes me throw up. As time falls on, I began to start conversations I can't keep. Every walk-on park visitor to the TV lounge changes the very walls around inside, and sense explains itself in 3-second broadcasts from the world outside. And every conversation is back to static grey. They have to flush the sweetness out of my veins because it makes me sick, living through the chill with nothing in there but weak water Valium and headache pills, living for visits and the first joke I crack open just to see what happens next. At the last ward round, they asked me if I'd like to try their last trick. Here in the dull of each dawn, all it holds is all it is, and all it is, all it was, is time. Until the blue shift, and the little world clicks back on and leaves me with the greatest gift of all, to be able to truly realise that life is beautiful. Thank you. I like to write about the subject of science, and I was quite interested in a theory called entropy. It's in a countercultural book, the novel called The Crying of Lot 49. I've always been interested in it, and I was asked to take part in a science slam in Cheltenham, but I had to write a poem about science, so I thought entropy, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows what entropy is, works really well in the process of a relationship, because in a closed system, everything can tend towards falling apart if you put too much pressure on it. So I decided to write that as a poem. This is called The Sexual Politics of Entropy. She told me over the brim of a lukewarm coffee cup, you know, we're not that atypical. Everything tends towards nothing. It was a closed door we kept, every day like a copy of the picture of the day before, her laser-sharp smile slowly dissipating into a grainy, frozen kind of smile. A Cheshire cat grin that somehow seemed to grow sadder. We spent the nights alone together, the distance between our words growing longer and noisier, the ash of every sentiment, every emotion, once a heart-coloured glow, and I walked into the carpet by bare feet. Both of us sitting on a sofa, underneath a duvet, watching children's television, trying to keep the heat in. I tried to tell him. I wrote notes and cigarette papers of how we sometimes need to be somewhere other than the place reflected in the pupil of the other's eye. But something kept me from myself. So I placed each note in an empty chocolate tin with a pretty illustrated picture of a place I'd never been to. It grew chipped and faded and ugly with every note I placed inside. He believes you make your own luck. I believe life is what makes you, and once we wasted all we had, all that love lyric sentiment, because all the words given, because all the care given, because all the love given loses something just a little in the transfer back and forth until all feeling falls apart. But What if there was a door between the chambers of the heart and you could perpetuate heat to keep it flowing like nothing out, like nothing in, but without the light of the rest of the worldly body, how could you even tell? So he asked her, with a voice dredged up from deep inside himself, could there have been another way? But she said once a pattern was set, it was always going to follow the arrow of time. He disagreed, said life is interlocking rings until you settle for the one around your finger. She placed her hand on his and told him, love in sunlight lingers, the love that walks it shares, the love that keeps vigil while the other is away, the love that sometimes dares depart is the love that often stays. She finished the bitter dregs of her coffee cup, straightened up and quit the cafe, while he stared at the universe slowly spinning in the surface of his drink, took a spoon and stirred each star into a different shape. As sunlight warmed the window, and somewhere else, not that far away, a couple sat down to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Sinead Coxhill.
This poem's called Flight. A bird flew down the chimney of my parents' room, swooping around disorientated. We managed to let it safely fly from the window. My father's heels spread, flying free. It made my mother smile. You knew the time was short and wanted to be at home for those last days. I travelled back in the ambulance with you, soothing you, holding your hand. It won't be long now, we're at the crossroads. Those days at home were a constant struggle. Your fight for breath painful to hear amidst the domestic sounds of teacups, news on TV. We sat with you night and day until the final time. Your brother John sat with you and then came through to make tea. I went to sit by your side, and within a few minutes you were gone from me, the painful breathing soothed. We cleared the rooms ready for the wake. A bird flew down the chimney in my parents' room, swooping around disorientated. We managed to let it safely fly from the window, my father's healed spirit flying free. It made my mother smile. This poem's called Where I'm From. I am from an Irish Catholic family, the third of six. I am from good farming stock going back through the generations. I am from 2 milking cows with heavy udders and from unpasteurised milk. I am from a baby kid and freshly laid warm brown eggs. I am from a large vegetable garden, lovingly tended by my father, and a potato field where we all joined in the harvesting. I am from the moss where we worked at getting our turf supply to see us through winter. I am from the hayfield where my father and I built the hay bales together. I am from other worlds too, but this world formed my core. Just like to finish off with the third poem, The Coca-Cola River. On Easter Sunday we visited the Coca-Cola River of childhood. The water flows brown and peaty. It carves its way through the bottom of our field, marking out the end of our farm, flowing around gorse and fast over pebbles. We wondered how much its course had altered through the decades since childhood when we splashed through it, thrilling at the iciness in our toes and then at the tingle we felt in our feet when we stepped out onto the bank and the blood flow was excited. I remember as a child falling in, squelching home, sneaking into the house to quickly get changed and conceal the evidence of the accident. The Coca-Cola River, froth and soft brown water of my childhood, a place where childhood secrets are hidden.
Thank you, Sinead. If you don't mind, I'd like to read something for you. This is from the current work in progress, but it's a bit of a tribute to Ballycastle Writers Group because it kind of has its genesis on the Ballycastle Rathlin Writers Weekend. So it's part of a novel. It's set in Rathlin in June 1898 at the time of the Marconi experiments. And I'll just read you maybe a page or so of it, if that's okay. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Stand up and have a very big voice. This is a character called Nuala who's speaking. Ginny has the toothache. She only has the 2 black teeth in her head that I can see, and both of them are giving her bother. She blames the spinning, years of pulling linen thread through her teeth to dampen it. She says there's not a spinster over 30 that has a tooth left in her head, but that won't be me. I clean my teeth with salt and soda the way Granda taught me. There's not a brighter smile on the island, he used to say. Ginny has me up near Mullendress, gathering yarrow to ease the pain in her jaw. It's a relief to get out of the house, to be honest, away from her gumming and shooting dulse into the grate, the red juice running down the shock of her chin. She's as sharp as a blade of arrowgrass, is Ginny. I can't move 2 steps, but she's asking where I'm going. There's very little that gets past her notice. I'm coming down along the low road near the big garden where the apple trees and the greengages grow, my shawl tied round my waist for a pocket, the yarrow tucked into the folds, my skirts skimming the tops of my boots. Morning on a day in early June, still and clear, the island stretching out green to the east and the lower end, rock and heather to the west. Church Bay lies in the crook below me. Knocklade rises, round-backed, blue, out of the haze across the sound, the sun climbing above it. The chit-chat of eider ducks in the bay, a splash of white as a seal slips off a rock at Portnaspag. The red bow of Jamesy Maguire's boat rounds the bow and makes for the pier. Below, by the water guards' houses, the tailor has the cart backed into the water alongside Dougal's boat, and old Susie the horse standing steady as she's bid between the 2 shafts. Taylor is balanced on the wheel of the cart, and he and Dougal are unloading turf from the deck of the curlew, and they have it heaped up on top of the cart, and the horse never moves except to worry her harness and blow steam out her nose at the cloud of midges that have gathered round her head. The 2 sails are furled round the masts. There's hardly a ripple on the water. The reflection of the boat and the horse and the cart and the turf load and the men, like what you'd see in a mirror. Dougal's big head swivels from side to side with every sod of turf he unloads, the lock of blonde hair on his forehead lifting with every move. The old black coat's been on his back that long it has the sheen of a magpie's tail. The tailor has his 2 sleeves rolled up to his elbows, his cap pulled down near his ears. It's hot work for an old man on a June day. He stops packing to wipe the back of his neck with a white handkerchief from his vest pocket, and I know when he rises from beside me in the morning, the bolster will be streaked with cum. They look as they do in the photograph the Englishman took of them, the one who wanted to capture the islanders in their natural state. He took us 2, me, Granny and Granda, standing by the water barrel outside the cabin, me in my bare feet and white apron, still a good head and shoulders above the other 2, the glashin hanging by their tails, drying in the sun on the rough wall behind us. All 3 of us staring hard, not smiling, since smiling was not our natural state. He sent us a copy, me, tall and broad-shouldered, dark pools of ink where my eyes and hair had been. Granny stuck it with flour and water into a stiff little paper frame. I look at it from time to time to remind me of what I've lost. Thank you. Next up is Emma Kane.
This is called The Selkie and the Sailor. A burly wind gathered momentum, propelling her closer to the water's edge. She closed her eyes, content to rest in the vibration of the coastline. The breeze blew her dark hair off her face, and she drank in the beauty of the ocean in all its glory. Breathing deeply, she allowed the salt air to fill her every pore. The saline taste teased her lips. She longed to feel the waves wash over her. She listened intently to the alluring lament of the Atlantic, aware it was calling her home. Encapsulated by its sorrowful song, she moved closer still to where ocean met land. Her heartbeat quickened, and she held her breath, knowing it was drawing her in. A few more steps, and her form would be cocooned in its purity. Froth and foam danced beguilingly, inviting her to drop anchor within, but sand crept between her toes in a plea to keep her grounded, and seashells whispered sweet nothings in her ear, pleading with her conscience. Yet she had eyes only for the ocean. She felt her heart swell as though it would implode. She knew her love was as vast as the object of its affection, and resistance was futile. With disbelief, he observed the scene from afar. Alarmed, he called to her from the rocks above, but the wind carried away his cries, and only the sound of the seagulls commanded the sky. He broke into a run, endeavouring to reach her before her shape shifted, but the beach sunk beneath his feet, and his legs seemed as useless as the jellyfish washed up on the shore. Realising his efforts were in vain, he watched defeated and despondent as she disappeared into the crest of a wave. She did not hesitate, nor look back. Aborting his bid to save her from herself, he collapsed on the shore, a broken man, head and hands. Grief and bitterness filled his being. He had lost his one true love, and with her his heart. As for the Selkie, she was home, and her sailor was but a distant memory.
Thank you, Hannah. Next up, Cahill McCann.
I'll give you two short poems and a short story. The only thing you need to know about this poem is Gallagher Blues were a type of cigarette that my father smoked, and I wrote this in 1990, just shortly after he died. Sitting in the corner with his 20 blues, holes burned in the armchair and ash around his shoes, holes burned in the carpet from butts dropped now long dead, and if someone asked who done it, I don't know, he said. And no one dared to blame him for anything destroyed, for you'd just get your ear felt and he'd just get annoyed. I won't say he was crabbit or his temper very quick, but before he'd stand and argue, he'd hit you one queer lick. But I'd say there was none better to do the job he done, to feed and raise and fill with praise all his 11 sons. And for his 7 daughters his heart was full of pride, for the day would come when they'd walk with him to the altar by his side. For all his faults and failings forgiveness was abound. Dad, I miss you very much. Now you're not around. So it took me 4 or 5 years to write one for my mother, and it happened one day I was just driving to Coleraine from Ballycastle to my work, and it's simply entitled For sacrifices made, for enormous debts unpaid, for times when you were sad and very low, for always being there, for teaching us to care, for showing us the proper way to go. For standing up to all in times when we were small, for never taking sides when trouble showed, for being there to care, for teaching us to share, for never taking, always giving all. For all of this and more, for all uncounted score, for all the time you worked, no thought of pay, for all the things you've done, from a very grateful son who knows just what his mother's love was for. This is just simply entitled. Brendan, who you'll be listening to, wrote a play, and we had there was other strange phenomenon. So this was homework for the 4th of March, thanks to Bernie. It was a lovely sunny summer's day, the blue sky broken only occasionally by a passing cloud. The warm breeze made me feel more alive than usual. That grass needs cut. My wife howls from the kitchen where she's feeding the boys. Cahill, the eldest, was 2 in June past, and Dwayne won't be 1 until August. I know! As I make my way towards the garage. How does she always know to tell me what to do whenever I was on my way to do it anyway? That's annoying. Lifting the garage door, I survey its contents, looking for a hint of where the lawnmower might be. It's one of those, you push me hard and I'll spin fast and cut the grass, but I'm not lifting it for you contraptions. I can't remember who gave it to me, but they had some friggin' sense of humour. Actually, it's not that bad. If you push it fast enough, it shoots the grass out and a fine mist, so I don't have to lift it either. Finding it hidden behind a pile of boxes and an old wardrobe, I drag it out for the first cut of the year. I know I've left it late, and the first cut is always the hardest, but I just hate cutting grass. My wife arrives to inspect the progress of the task she delivered an hour earlier. Are you for cutting the back too? She asks, with a smile that's almost lost in the cloud of sarcasm that delivered it. Yes, I said, with an expression on my face that would tell her exactly where to go, if she could see it. What's that? I said. What's that? She said. What's what? I replied. That there, in the sky. I stop. I look up in the direction she's pointing. It's coming down, I said. It's going to crash. Without a thought, I ran in the house, grabbed my camera bag and helmet. Where are you going? She asked, as I passed her and mounted the saddle of my 200cc Honda Bentley, my motorcycle, my only means of transport. I'll be back in a minute. My thoughts were where? Where's the best place to get the picture? Where? With one eye on the road and the other following the object through the sky, I traced its journey through the heavens as best I could on back roads and lanes that I hadn't seen since my childhood. It struck the ground 3 times, leaving large gashes in the landscape and debris scattered everywhere it touched down. I shot many pictures over the 20-minute journey, but my favourite has always been one of the first, taken about 3 minutes after I dropped the handles of the lawnmower, standing at the end of the bridge in Ballycastle, the dropping well bar in the foreground, and Richard Branson's transatlantic balloon in the sky. Friday the 3rd of July, 1987.
Thank you, Cathal. Jimmy Milliken.
This is set in the Shetland Islands, and on a very small island in particular called Papa, and it's part of a longer piece called The Loch That Ebbs and Flows. This is where the body came ashore after 6 weeks in the tide, with the head missing, so it was whispered. Bloated and stinking in torn oilskins, the last remains of Billy Tulloch, lapping in the shallows at the head of Cullivoe, on the edge of the shingle spit that holds back the waters of the loch that ebbs and flows. It was John who found him, and rightly so, for it was John's boat he had taken, seeking more drink after 3 days on a bender. It was not often he drank, but when he did, he wouldn't stop for a week or longer. He'd run out with the thirst still on him, so he phoned an order to the mainland, but then John wouldn't lend him the boat. It was madness, with a storm imminent. So he slipped away to Cullivoe, where the Venture was moored, and made for Sanus. By the time he got there, it was blowing a force 8 and strengthening all the while. As he picked up his carry-out, some of the Sanus men came down to try to persuade him not to go back. He only laughed and snapped open a can. He took a long swig and let the Venture back away from the slip. A tricky manoeuvre at any time, for there was a huge rock just under the surface that would rip the keel off if you weren't aware of it. But he knew what he was doing. As a young man, he'd rowed from Papa to Fulla in a 6-foot dinghy, 20 miles each way across the open ocean, the swell so high he was out of sight of land for most of the trip. As for Papa Sound, he'd been back and forth more times than anyone on the isle, bar John. He knew the tides, the jagged coast, the reefs, the stacks. The Sanus men watched as he disappeared into the darkness. When he didn't come home, the Coast Guard was alerted. Oscar Charlie, the search and rescue helicopter from Sombra, flew the coast all night. The 8th lifeboat patrolled offshore. The Papa men walked the coastline, shining their torches onto the breaking waves. The beams disappeared in spray and darkness, and the ocean roared and roared. Lizzie said She knew when it happened. She was sitting in the living room, waiting. At 9:30, she felt him passing through the room, reaching out to her. Then he was gone. She was alone. In the morning's light, Oscar Charlie spotted the Venture lying on the bottom by Causeway. He had brought her all the way back in the fury of a Force 9, in utter darkness, only to hit Causeway as he came into the mouth of Causeway and safety. There was no sign of a body on the boat. No one knew the waters round Papa better than John Jameson of Midster. He followed the wind and tide every day, searching for his brother-in-law, the man who'd taken his boat to the bottom. John had been to the whaling in South Georgia. He'd bought the Venture with his earnings from 3 trips. The boat had been his life ever since. 6 weeks later, Billy Tulloch came ashore. The tide had carried him round the isle, back and forth, day after day. And when he came, John was waiting, at the head of Causeway, on the edge of the shingle spit that holds back the black brackish water of the loch that ebbs and flows.
Thank you, Jimmy. And Brendan, Vicky?
Just 2 pieces. One is a short poem and the other is a short piece of prose. The poem is The Last Sense. Can you still see her, at least in your mind's eye, or is it too blind? Can you scent the fear of death, of loss in the air, and taste the salt of tear from the eye? Can you feel the caress of her hand, so tender and slow, and hear her whispers, just loving and low? They say hearing is the last sense to go. Okay. And the prose is, our village has had very few remarkable events. I remember the local team winning the county championship and returning home with a victory parade of 10 cars and 18 children. Then there was the time in 2002 when a film crew came to make a TV advert on behalf of some communications company. The implication was that we were the most remote village in the whole of Ireland. The locals boycotted its production and protested this implied insult. But one day is always recalled, especially on Saturday nights in the middle of a few pints and before Mickey Nashville McGurl hits the stool in the corner and twangs up his guitar. There is a dispute about the exact date, but agreement that it was in May. It was a bright day with good growth. The 2 shops were busy with half a dozen customers between them. The 2 pubs had yet to open, although there may have been a few drinkers left from the night before. The post office had a fair-sized queue. It was benefits and pension day, a double header that would increase the village's cash flow, and Maggie, who ran the 2-day-a-week cafe, was expecting a good run on the scones. Within 10 minutes it was empty, not a soul to be seen. Shutters were down, doors locked. The sun was high in the sky with the odd slow drifting cloud. The only sounds were a few accelerating cars and the chapel's Angelus bell. The village was more deserted than you expect to see in a western. And then it rode in, the motor tax detection car. Thanks to the advance phone call from Elvis Maguire, who lived 5 miles up the road, it had hit an abandoned village. It never came back.
Thank you, Brendan. And finally, Jim Simpson.
I think this is the first day of the Balmoral show. I think I heard that in the radio. So this is just the first wee bit of a story about a farmer and his bull. Michael was a bull's bull, muscle on the hoof. No French powdered poodle of a beast, mincing on short legs and fine feet was he, I'm telling you. When it came to doing his bullful duties, and that was often enough, for he was called upon day and night by his instinctual urges, the energy of him was a joy and a bountiful blessing to behold. Neither was he a Belgian with a blue rinse or a blow dry in his hair, treading the flat lands of Flanders with a horror of hills and high mountains, the sort of bovine bowsy you'd see at an agricultural show, and him letting on to be asleep, standing up, but winking all the same, out of small, cute eyes like a sly marmalade supping priest. Nor yet a German sausage of a lavish brute, a beer-worst salami slab of an animal, an indolent tank of a creature with a white gold carrot ring in the proud nose of him, looking down on lesser kine out of the haughty Hunness of him. No Swiss chocolate sucking, cuckoo clocking Toblerone of a fella, tinkling like a church bell or yodeling like an Egypt in the high Alps and funicular pastures with the falsetto of a sacred altar boy. No useless diving watch of a clown was he to take his massive body to the deep and murky fathoms of lakes on the borders of the neutral cantons. Oh no. By gob, he was a bursting bud of raw testosterone for his harem, a true warrior, a man for the job, a bull and a half. Ribbons galore bestrewned his fine bull house, littering the sturdy polished wood pens of him, and decorating his reputation for posterity. Rosettes plastered on the walls in yellows and greens and royal purples. Certificates and ribbons fluttered with quality and preeminence, if ever a breeze should flitter through an open window like a red admiral or a bee on a wafty air. He was the proud man indeed for the camera, and who could blame him, standing there in sunshine, gazing with an open countenance into a dozen long lenses, and the snappers clicking and rotating 100 dials for focus, and slim girls behind them raising parasols against the torrid fire of heaven, and the trials of unsightly scaldings on their porcelain skins. A bull with a glint at the end of his chain he was, and it of tempered steel. He was a listening lad with keenness of ear for the music of the herd, and a sense of timing better than the wireless. Thoroughbred to the last frond of his tail, he never looked past a cow and her gasping for consummation. Should he travel the length of a 10-acre field and it a slow walk, shame would surely have gripped the sensitive parts of him to ignore a single one of them, old or young. Indeed, violent was his style when it came to the bit, and woe betide the labouring boy or learner veterinary surgeon in his white coat or fancy overall, obstructing the way when he was fixed in the act of procreation. Heaven help the poor blackguard of a queue boy that rattled a bucket of nuts, or patted his head at the wrong moment when he had the main business on his mind and the heat was on him. For all that, a civiller bull and a dociler bull was never seen when the frenzy was expended for the day, and he again content and chomping like a Christian on the sweet grasses of success and satisfaction, and the female cattle lowing approval of him in the harmony of a choir, or praising him with a single voice of approbation, and him basking in it, musing on the happy hopes of tomorrow's healthy progenies, skipping in their summer spirits, leaping and throwing their young lanky legs with exuberance in the air. These were the thoughts coagulating behind the high kingly forehead of him, and beneath the spiritual curls adorning his head.
I tried on hats and frocks and headdresses for my son's wedding, Charlie Bird said Haiti needed Band-Aid or a miracle, for people bled on streets and died and lay lost in their thousands. Faces new to starving pleaded on a screen for food and water, safety and shelter from a baking sun. I tried on hats and found a look that I like, that may be right, and live, and hope that under us the ground will stay intact, and pray that every widow's mite may hurry through the air to comfort even some. And the other poem was written about my grandson Joseph, and I suppose about the innocence of childhood. It was written when he was a baby. Child on a wet morning, for Joseph. I know no danger in the wind that blows to chaos trees and hedges, but I feel the thrill of it when I am lifted in strong arms. Rain may play about my face, and I will taste it in a smile. A spray of drops will shower my hatless head, but I am warm from love, and too new to this life for it to bother me.
Sorry. My name is Mary Hayward, and this is a poem I wrote a few years ago, I think at Bernie's class, called My Father's Coat. It was written a few years after my father died and the farm was being let out, so I had a last look around just to say goodbye. It sags from the rafters in the museum of the buyer, like he just shrugged it off in the October of his life. Spiders have spun big hairnets of webs on the collar and shoulders of its once best coat, now sparkled and cold, like snow holes in thaw, and inside his pockets grass seed and nails. Whispers of pipe smoke return him to me, with his eye to the sky, his soul to the soil. And this one's called A 20th Century Woman. She was a welcoming committee, a baker, up to her elbows in flour, knocking out soda bread, apple tarts, pancakes for all who entered the domain of her hearth. She was a milkmaid, bucket between her knees, head resting in cow's flank, strones of milk foaming, dancing out the rhythm of her days. She was a teacher, explaining the mysteries of long division in pencil on the blackboard of her white kitchen tiles. She was a washerwoman, singing as she scrubbed sheets, nappies, dungarees in a tin bath in the yard. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, her motto for life. She was a seamstress, rattling out dresses, drindle skirts, at the lapsing of the light on her mother's old Singer sewing machine, her feet flapping like wings. She was a giggler, wiping away tears that rained down her glasses, her whole body heaving and the mirth of her laughter way out of control. She was a saint, trusting always in God, knees worn out on the hard kitchen floor, praying litanies of rosaries, novenas, aspirations, lighting candles for special intentions. She was my mother.
My name is Finola McNichol. I've joined the group just 2 years ago now, so I'm pretty new to it. Causeway, Coast and Glens. From Rathland Sound to the meandering ripples of the River Roe, our borough council you will find, where nature's beauty abounds these northern shores, with secluded bays and scenic strands, where the tired ocean rests on her sands, by the Causeway, Coast and Glens. Where mountains climb and drumlins roll, the yellow whin shines bright, where sheep graze and wander at will, silence broken by their bleats, across a pastured valley floor of the Causeway, Coast and Glens. In its towns and villages, culture, heritage and history you'll find. Music, tradition and hearts of gold. You'll find a welcome from young and old in the Causeway, Coast and Glens. just a wee tribute to our new councillor. This is just a poem, just a reflection of childhood days. It's called Nature's Playground. As daylight stretches and darkness fades, spring sun shines through the planting's leafy glade. Delicate snowdrops, heads bowed in gentle sway, peep out to greet the biting day. A choir of warbling songbirds trills the air, as bramble hedgerows unfold from their russet lair. They stretch to shrug the yawn of winter sleep, and listen to distant lambs bleat. A floor of ivy carpets strewn with fallen sprigs, crunched and cracked as we trampled over twigs. Ash and elm in the sunlight gleamed, now dressed in green, no longer grey. Their outstretched arms summoned us children to play. The trees became small hamlets as the birds built their nests. From a branch of a sycamore we'd make a swing and await to hear little fledglings sing. A rope from a branch made us Tarzan and Jane as we'd swing from tree to tree. As Willow wept in her despair, we made a tent under her long flowing hair. There were Corbett flips from the bough of a tree, skinned knees cured with a kiss and TCP. A long sally rod made arrows and bows to fly through the air, while yellow-centred daisies made chains for our hair. Sweet-smelling hawthorn set the planting aglow, their pink and white petals like summer snow. They became a bouquet when we played brides and grooms, and became confetti as they wilted away. Fuchsia-coloured foxgloves gave us thimbles to wear, and pale pink rocket a garland for our hair. We knew who liked butter, with a buttercup under the chin, and wrestled haughty-headed hemlock to see who would win. Clumps of nasty nettles we'd tread carefully by, but if we were stung, dock and sap we'd apply. We watched as prickly hedgehogs slowly waddled by, and rabbits hop when to catch them we'd try. Industrious bees and swarming wasps kept us on our toes, and of smelling pretty foxgloves they could sting you on the nose. We'd try to catch butterflies in their bright and colourful flare, as they played hide and seek with flowers while fluttering through the air. As autumn arrived, berries turned ripe. Amid brambles and thorns we'd gather our might. Blackberries and currants, picking was slow. There was some for the bucket, others to eat as we'd go. Purple stains around our hands and mouth, scrubbed off by Lifebuoy soap at night. Then the planting changed its clothing, autumnal colours it would wear, but the howling wind danced through the air, soon left it depressed and bare. With winter the planting's cloak became white, silver and grey. The chirping robin redbreast was never far away. In hail, rain or in snow, he was there to stay. He was in charge while fauna hibernated and flora took a rest, while us children too looked forward to spring again and nature's best.
My name's Maeve O'Hara. I've been a member of the writing group in Limavady for 12 years. We were given this title one time and we had to write a story about it. So this was my piece. The title was Aerobics, a Secret Diary and something unpleasant under the bed. So there's aerobics if you'd like to see what aerobics is like. So anyway, aerobics, I am told, is a simple, non-intensive way to keep fit. There are several kinds to be enjoyed, if that is the right word. One variety is step aerobics, another is aqua aerobics. There are other kinds, but I have forgotten them already. After seeing a few pictures of aerobic classes in action, I can think of easier ways of putting my back out, or breaking a leg, or falling over backwards. For the less energetic, what about a chocolate-a-thon? An ideal way to, I wrote this at Easter, by the way, an ideal way to make the Easter holidays become more enjoyable. And you won't even have to leave the comfort of your own house to take part. Even better, you won't have to leave the comfort of your own sofa. Just stock up with a selection of your favourite Easter eggs, or as many of them as you can afford. A few chocolate bunnies are always a good idea too, and a couple of bags of those miniature eggs always go down well. This may sound extravagant, but believe me, it isn't. Remember, you won't be eating any regular meals during your chocolate. You can forget about butter-basted chicken and slow-cooked leg of lamb, roast potatoes and sage and onion stuffing. Think of the money you're saving. And of course there'll be no washing up to do, just lots of silver paper and recyclable cardboard to dispose of quickly and easily. I would recommend that you keep a secret diary as you progress through your chocolate-a-thon. It will make happy reading later on when you take a craving for more chocolate and realise that you haven't paid the phone bill yet and you're out of oil and the window cleaner is shouting for his money at the back door. Be of good heart, as they say. Your diary will bring back wonderful memories of those golden days at Easter when every hour was chocolate o'clock and every moment was me time. Happy days. A word of warning nevertheless, especially if you have a dog that likes chocolate too. Make sure you keep your chocolate bunnies, etc. well out of his reach. Last year, Rover O'Hara found an extra stash I had in the bedroom and indulged in rather too much me time for his own good. What I found under the bed later that evening was rather unpleasant. There's been some talk about royal babies and royal nannies and all that sort of thing recently, so I thought I was inspired to write this piece about sort of how the other half lives. It's a mummy and daughter talking. It's called What the Butler Did. But I need him, Henrietta said as she buttered the toast. He was the best ever butler ever, and we were going to Scotland to buy new cashmere blankets for the polo ponies next week. I'm devastated, absolutely devastated, Mummy. Henrietta stifled a sob as she reached for the marmalade once more. Her mother was as sympathetic as it was possible for her to be about anything. There are plenty more butlers in the sea, darling. He can soon be replaced. Not like James, Mummy. There'll never be another James. He was my boulder, my shoulder to cry on. She buttered more toast. Why did he leave, darling? He must have had a reason. Henrietta helped herself to a tissue before she answered. The Smedley Gimballs offered him a bigger salary and a uniform with breast buttons. She blew her nose loudly. Hoping to lighten the mood, her mother inquired as to the whereabouts of Henrietta's husband, Sir Charles. He went to Paris last Monday to choose a new waistcoat for the Hunt Ball. He won't be back for another fortnight. She poured herself another cup of coffee and buttered 2 more slices of toast. The marmalade appeared to be finished. And the children, darling, continued her mother. Nurse took them into the village last Wednesday afternoon, and I haven't really seen them since. But I'm sure they'll be fine. Nurse is awfully good with them, Mummy. Besides, it's such a long way up to the nursery, even with the chairlift. She was interrupted by the arrival of the maid with more toast and another pot of coffee. Maisie, said Henrietta, have you seen the children recently? Yes, ma'am. Master Timothy started his first term at Eton last Friday, and Miss Phoebe is in an isolation ward at the London Free Hospital. She's come down with that nasty disease from West Africa. Oh, thank you, Maisie. Could we have some more marmalade?
My name's Monica Doherty, and I've only, within the last 12 months, joined the writing group. This that I'm going to read to you is based on fact, with only the name changed to protect identity. Mina woke in the hospital bed. She was back in the single ward, and it was morning. She didn't remember much about the evening before. She must have slept most of the time since returning from the theatre. She looked around the room and noticed the sun was shining outside. The yellow rays streaming through the window gave some warmth to the small room. She felt strange and didn't really know how she was feeling. The experience of going into a high-tech operating theatre the day before had been a bit bizarre. There was a sudden knock at the door and Mina called, "Come in." A young woman entered with a strange trolley. It looked like a large laptop on wheels with a fairly large screen. The young woman said she was a technician and she was going to test the device. This is what they had implanted in Mina the day before. This procedure was news to Mina. No one had said anything about this. What would it entail, she wondered, and what was the machine for? The technician rolled the trolley over to the side of the bed, smiling at Mina and telling her not to worry. She started to untangle a bunch of leads and left them over the foot of the bed. She stuck little pads over various points of Mina's body and connected the leads to them. Mina realised this was familiar. It was like the large ECG machine. She had a few of those traced done since her heart had failed. Mina settled down as she realised this wouldn't hurt. Then the technician held a device in her hand which looked like a very large computer mouse. The next thing Mina knew was the technician putting this over the bandage on her shoulder. "What's that?" she asked, her nerves starting up again. "It's the wand that will read the device on your shoulder. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt," answered the technician as she set up the screen on the trolley. She started to go through the touch screen with the stylus and printouts appeared from the side of the machine. Mina relaxed again, thinking, "This is easy enough, nothing to worry about." Then the technician dropped the bombshell. "I'm going to slow down your heart and then speed it up. You might feel a bit woozy." Before Mina could panic or protest, she felt a sudden sensation. She really could feel her heart slowing and then racing. She was relieved when the technician returned it to normal. "Everything is working fine," smiled the technician as she collected the stream of data paper and neatly folded it into a file. She thanked Mina and left. Mina lay back on the bed. It had been an extraordinary experience. She thought back over the last 6 months. She was sure she was going to die when the doctor said her heart had failed. But those same doctors had given her a chance with a small machine that wasn't as big as the palm of her hand. It would keep her heart beating. It could restart her heart if it stopped, and it could regulate her heartbeat if necessary. And now she knew that the technician could slow down and speed up her heart by standing and talking to her. Talk about the bionic woman. Welcome to the National Health Service in the 21st century.
I'm Diana. This is called Home from School in 1941. We've all been talking about VE Day, so I'm just going to tell you a tiny little bit about a family that lived about 5 miles away from an aircraft factory in the west of England. I walked into the kitchen. The walls were reinforced with pit props running neatly from floor to ceiling. In the space beneath the stairs, an iron bedstead. At night, the sirens wailed, guns thundered, planes droned. Underneath the bed, the dog screamed. On top, my mother screamed. On top of me, to save me from the bomb. This is called Sunday lunch the day after the wedding. It was my daughter's second wedding and a very happy one compared with the first one. New links are being formed, old hatreds reawakened. One old man striving towards a shimmer of conviviality, the accepted myopic myth of comfortable companionship. He was my ex-husband. Is unaware there are deep wounds scarcely scarred over. Scratch them and they bleed. A carefully aimed remark, shot from the hip, opens a nest of wasps. An insult remembered from 50 years ago. brings a carefully calculated acid reply. Heads jolt back, and instant silence opens like the centre of a whirlpool, swallows the conflict. Social chatter recommences.
I have the beginnings of a short story. It's called Frost. My name's Georgia Wilder. Ava Salister felt her knee creak as she crouched into the long grass at the edge of her garden. The Arctic fox twitched his ears but remained at his evening ritual, crunching on the bones of a small animal he'd caught earlier. His fur was starting to change colour, and Ava smiled at the realisation that this had become a season signifier for her. The colours of the leaves, the snow line from the northern Yukon, and the rapid drop in temperature, the shortening of days, and the changes in this fox's coat. He was starting to rely on Ava as well, she knew. Ava had resisted the temptation to leave out food the first year she'd seen the fox sniffing around her cabin. His power, strength and energy came from his self-reliance and self-sufficiency, and Ava wasn't about to steal that away from him. But then the second year was hard, the winter was longer than usual, and more importantly for the Arctic fox, it had started earlier. He hadn't built up his fat stores yet, and Ava had found him in mid-December when she was out collecting wood for her fire. Nothing but a tiny ball of fur in an endless expanse of snow. He was so cold that he couldn't raise his nose from his tail, but he looked up at Ava. She saw chips of blue ice and a snow-white face, and she'd known that to leave him would be to kill him. It had still taken the best part of a day to coax the small beast to trust her, sitting quietly, quelling the chattering of her teeth as her bones rapidly absorbed the cold. She allowed the Arctic fox to get used to her human scent. Ava wouldn't give up. Wrapping him in a spare coat she'd always carried, she'd taken him back to her cabin, the only man-made building for about 100 miles. And it was made by a woman, Ava always added internally. For 3 days she'd nursed the small fox back to health, finally cracking and naming him Frost, after her favourite poet. 3 years later, and the two of them had an uneasy friendship, one half wild, the other half tame.
No time pressure then. I'm Jason. I'm from the Ballycastle group. I don't know how long I've been going, so that guys will tell you. I've got 2 quick poems then because the time's obviously pressing. So this first one's called The Men in Gate. I wept openly, unashamedly, wantonly, while the bugles lament echoed round vaulted marble. No clarion call, no reveille. A last post reverberates to name after name, recorded and inscribed in Maiorum Dei Gloriam, unburied, unknown, unforgotten. We wept. Obviously poems have to rhyme, otherwise it's just a statement of rhythm. So, alright. Okay, so this one's called Pajama Land. Old Mother Hubbard had filled up her cupboard and the party was going for the swing. The cat with the fiddle had started to play and Tommy Tucker had started to sing. Old King Cole had collected his dole and brought a 6-pack of bitter. He hoped the old woman had managed at last to get hold of a good babysitter. Little Jack Horner sat in the corner with vomit all over his chest. He'd been out in the terror with Daddy Bear and wasn't feeling his best. Simple Simon had robbed a pieman and he was feeling rather merry. He won a few quid on a tortoise called Sid after a steward's inquiry. Humpty Dumpty had got himself smashed out drinking with Little Boy Blue. They had pints and shots and alcohol pops, and now they were looking for glue. All the king's horses and all the king's men would probably kick off a fight, and the 10,000 men had got pissed again and wandered off into the night. Little Bo Peep thought Mary looked cheap, and her clothes made her look tarty. Mary didn't care, because Jack would be there, and she brought Brasso for after the party. Georgie Porgy lay on his back while Dr. Foster attended. He'd attempted to kiss Jack's little sis. It seems he's easily offended. Well, the crack was grand in Pajama Land, and a great time was had by all. We'll see you again down Drury Lane for the Muffin Man's having a ball.